So I'm Kimberly Williams, and I'm very excited to welcome you to our first live public event of Poetry on the Move, even though it's via Zoom. I'd like to just really quickly acknowledge that we are, that I am in UC, which is the University of Canberra. We are on Ngunnawal land, and we'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present, and emerging. This has not been ceded land. Having said that, we're so excited to bring the reading of the Borderless Anthology. This was a combination of, I can't see myself, so, but it was a combination of recent work press, Australian poetry is part of why we're able to do this tonight. And so it's a collaboration. And we really thank you for taking some time on Freedom Day and to be with us in poetry. So with having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Melinda Smith, who will be hosting this evening.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's very, very generous of the Poetry on the Move Festival to allow our beautiful Borderless reading to be part of their event, and we say thank you very much for giving us this home for our poems and poets. My name's Melinda Smith. I'm one of the co-editors of Borderless. I'm not going to say very much. I'm just going to be the kind of MC throwing to all the different poets as part of the evening. And but I do have just a couple of things to say. I am also coming to you from unceded Ngunnawal country. And if you would like to share where you are or what country you're coming from in the comments, that would be great. If you don't happen to be on the country of your ancestors, you can also tell us your family or your whānau or your mob or your connections, if you would like to pay respect in that way too. So we are now going to hear from up to 7 readers from the Borderless Anthology, and we're also going to hear from Editor-in-Chief Saba Vasefi. Before we do that, just a kind of quick introduction in case you haven't kind of come across the Borderless Anthology before. It was the brainchild of Saba, and it is an anthology, a transnational anthology of feminist poetry, which gives a very deliberate kind of priority and precedence to the voices of women of colour, First Nations women, refugee women, women with a disability, queer women, and just kind of gives a very, very multi-voiced and multifaceted perspective on feminism. So this is just, I mean, all of us who have worked on this book are absolutely astounded at the enormous quality and range of the poetry that's been assembled here. And we're really, really proud of the book. We're incredibly grateful to Recent Work Press for being the publisher of the book. And we're grateful to everyone who's kind of worked to come together. We have a bunch of sponsors of the book and of this reading who I'm now going to thank, because you should do that. So the book was helped to be assembled by contributions from Macquarie University, Amnesty International, Australian Poetry, Syd West Multicultural Services, Sydney Women's Fund, Affinity Intercultural Foundation, and Red Room Poetry. And this particular event, as well as being supported by Poetry on the Move, it's also sponsored by Australian Poetry with the support of the Australian the Copyright Agency's Australian Cultural Fund. So enormous thanks to everybody for their support for this fabulous project. And the editor-in-chief, as I said, was Saba Vasefi, and the kind of helper editors chugging along in the background, as it were myself and Yvette Holt, who is also chairperson of the First Nations Australia Writers Network. So shout out to Yvette as well for her contribution. So now what I am hoping to do is to ask Saba Vasefi to say a few words to set the scene for our readings, and to tell the story of this book, and then I will say a few words to introduce each of the readers. I am going to read out a short biography of Saba before I throw it over to her, just so that you can get some context on this amazing person you're about to hear from. So Saba Vasefi is a multi-award winning journalist, academic, documentary filmmaker and poet. Her poems have appeared in a variety of journals, including Transnational Literature, Wasafiri Magazine of International Contemporary Writing, that's based in the UK, Cordite Poetry and Australian Poetry Journal. In 2020, she was commissioned by Red Room Poetry to write poems in response to work in the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Saba writes for The Guardian and a number of other outlets, teaches at Macquarie University, and has just submitted a few months ago her PhD in exilic feminist cinema studies. Her documentary films have screened internationally, including for the BBC, the UN and Amnesty International. She's received more than half a dozen awards for her work on refugee and feminist issues, and has served as an advisor and ambassador for many refugee causes. She was twice a judge for the Sekhide Dolatabadi Book Prize for the best book on women's literature and women's issues, as well as the BR4R Seeking Asylum Poetry Prize. She organised the 2016 Diaspora Symposium on Refugees and Asylum Seeker Discourse, and including its Social Justice Award. And she also organised the 2015 Sydney International Women's Poetry and Arts Festival, which was the first time that I met her, and was privileged to work with her on a poetry project. She has been mentioned with congratulations on the floor of the New South Wales Legislative Council for these activities and for her ongoing contribution to women's rights and social justice. And so I hand you over to the wonderful Saba Vasefi.
Thank you so much, Melinda. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gather today and thank them for sheltering me and my daughter. In the name of the souls who suffer in silence, their faces forever camouflaged, their voices stifled by tyranny and oppression. My grandmother's burning books owned by my uncle, a political activist in the backyard to save him from the new authoritarian regime. When the fundamentalists got into power in Iran, like a vivid sense of my childhood have been settled in my memory. Witnessing the burning books and breathing in the smell of their smoke taught me that knowledge production and the books are essential, which is why my grandmother strove to destroy the books in the fire. My conflicted childhood living in the war between Iran and Iraq, enduring the consequence of Islamic revolution, growing up between Muslims and communists, contention, and handling my exilic periphery in the West manifested the nature of power structures and their violence to me. Liberation is always a creative expression process, and my passion for foregrounding stories and breaking silences encouraged me to work on the Borderless. By sharing our sense of justice with those who risk their lives, we can move beyond the guardianship culture, a culture of patronization, to a culture of subversing superiority. So resistance history is vital in motivating the younger generation who expose discrimination to stand tall and call for justice. I consciously strive not to allow the xenophobia we are exposed to in our daily life to shape my spirit. Instead, outrage inspires me further towards the aesthetics of resistance, and I'm obsessed with beauty. As a survivor of fundamentalist tyranny, I am humbled to gift my personal profits from the latest project, Borderless, an anthology of transnational feminist poetry under the name of Borderless Scholarship to brave Afghan Hazara refugee women, Nargis and Mahbouba Alizadeh, who are living in a state of displacement within Iran and Australia for almost 2 decades. Nargis is a Hazara Afghan refugee who arrived with her mother and siblings in Australia in 2013 after traveling through Pakistan and Indonesia and were sent to the offshore processing center in Nauru. In August 2014, her mother Nasrin, who was beaten and injured by Taliban in Afghanistan, was transferred to Darwin for urgent medical care. However, only one of her 3 children was allowed to join her 2 weeks later. As a result, the family was effectively separated for over 4 years. In 2016, Nasrin and her younger daughter, Mahbouba, were transferred from Darwin detention to Sydney. And it was the beginning of my work for this family. I wrote about this family struggle for almost 6 months in The Guardian, in the series of stories. Nargis and her brother Dariush remained on Nauru until October 2018, when they were transferred to Willowwood Immigration Detention Center in Sydney for medical reasons. Nargis, her mother and siblings now live in community detention in Sydney behind Willowwood Immigration Detention Center. However, they continue to experience family separation as her father is not permitted to live with them. Over 100 people have signed an open letter and petition to the Australian government asking the family to be granted refugee visa and to be settled in Australia. All of these people were Borderless supporters or contributors. Establishing the Borderless Scholarship is a form of civil action resisting oppression and tyranny and authoritarianism, and my way of standing with women who exist in the margin, particularly the Alizadeh family who are living in a state of displacement within Iran and Australia for almost 2 decades. The issue of violence against refugee women, their deprivation from education, and the gendered harms of Australia's immigration detention regime have received little public attention. Privileging marginalized women experience allows the historical, psychological, and cultural complexity of their situations to be understood. This alleviates the invisibility of subaltern women that enable us and enable invisibility of subaltern women that enables such atrocities as femicide in Iran and Afghanistan, or the violence of indefinite detention in Australia to be undertaken with impunity. I would like to thank my co-editors, publisher, contributors, whoever support this book, this project, this vision, these voices. I would like to dedicate this performance to all of you tonight and wrap up my talk.
Thank you.
I'm gonna perform one of my poems and dedicate it to you, Shen, and all of the contributors, and Kimberly as well. تو رفتی و دلم غمین شد غریق آه آتشین شد از آن شبی که برنگشتی جهان که شادی آفرین بود برای من غم آفرین شد از آن شبی که برنگشتی. I orbit like a sun forgetful of how to shed either light or warmth. I turn and turn, a nameless gypsy, the world's most frantic sunflower. We are not alone in our loneliness. Exile is a crowded solitude. The dysphoric world is overrun with outsiders, and I'm outsider. Look at the owl, see how holds her wings around her hollowness and sleeps. What every morning she calls the broken branches perish. Do we think we are less than the bats that hang and intone their anguish to the dark? Are we less than the rooster whose early morning never knew a night? The clocks still run on Greenwich Mean Time, but perhaps this place is another time now. And here perhaps it's God who faces the firing squad. And no longer will we need to dress up our kisses in disguise. We are not strangers anymore, neither estranged nor strange. Here alone, we are all of us kin. Love you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saba. That was just wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that and your wonderful poem at the end too. Yes, and there's people in the chat also saying thank you. Before we go on, could I just ask you, Kimberly, to make me a co-host? I've been texting you, but you haven't been able to get my messages for some reason.
No, I did.
Oh, you did make me, okay, good.
Yeah, and then I responded.
Yeah, okay, good. For some reason, I didn't get the response. So that just, because we're hoping to be able to spotlight the readers for everyone, and so that they're bigger also on the recording. And if, for example, you want to if the people watching along at home want to spotlight someone, you just click on the little, click on their image, and there should be a ... in their top right-hand corner, and you can make it bigger for yourself, even if we haven't made it bigger for you at this end. Anyway, moving right along to the part of the evening where we get to hear poems from Borderless. So this fabulous book, we did mention it's available from Recent Work Press, and I will drop a link in the chat in a little while to remind folks where they can get it. So our very first reader, we're kind of going in alphabetical order of surname, really boring. But the person who's reading is not boring, and that's Cassandra Atherton. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Cassandra, and then she can tell you a little about her poem, and then share her poem from the anthology with us tonight. So Cassandra is an award-winning writer and scholar of prose poetry. She was a visiting scholar in English at Harvard University, a visiting fellow in literature at Sophia University, Tokyo, and is currently professor of writing and literature at Deakin University. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Leftovers from 2020 and Fugitive Letters, also from 2020. She's been a very productive poet and editor. She's currently working on a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council, and Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry and Introduction, also published 2020, and co-edited the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry, again published in 2020, with Paul Hedrington, who is also with us tonight. So that's all about Cassandra. I'll hand over to you, and you can tell us about your poem and share it with us.
Thank you so much. I wanted to obviously start by thanking Saba and Melinda and Yvette for this really wonderful and important publication. I'm really thrilled to be in this anthology with so many fabulous poets and poems. I want to thank Shane at Recent Work Press for publishing another incredibly beautiful and incredibly thought-provoking book. I actually now have a shelf here that is just all recent work press. So it delights me to see so many of my favorites are from Shane and recent work press. So my prose poem is about Zelda Saya Fitzgerald. When I was doing some research on Zelda, specifically about her taking up ballet at the age of 29, which I was really interested in, I actually found some transcripts from therapy sessions where F. Scott Fitzgerald explained what he believed was her role as muse and his role as writer. And not unlike Dorothy Wordsworth, it's really clear that Fitzgerald used many of her descriptions unacknowledged in his own work. So I've used a few lines, 3 lines from the transcripts in this prose poem. It's called Single Pink Slipper because sadly, after a fire at the sanatorium in which Zelda was staying, it was the only thing that they could use to identify her remains. So this is called Single Pink Slipper and it's for Zelda Saya Fitzgerald. One long exhalation into sleep, heavy hips, fingertips, lips. Everything that we have done is mine. Her mind is a memory wheel, swimming by moonlight in Catcoma Creek, breakfasts of champagne and fresh spinach, jumping into the fountain at Union Square, scraps of journals, fragments of letters shining in another's prose like newly bobbed hair. That is all my material. Belladonna, potassium bromide, horse serum and morphine, drawn out rhythms of narrative and sleep. Darkness beats like a fast heart. Where's the fire? This is not Westport. She'll die as another madwoman in the attic, trapped in sedation, lost in silence. None of it is yours. Thank you. Buy the book, buy the book.
That is fabulous, Cassandra. Thank you so much. So I'm now going to find my way to our next reader in alphabetical order. It was going to be Tusiata Avia, and she's been unfortunately taken ill this evening, and we're just waiting if we can get permission for one of us to read her poem instead. So we're going to skip over to Tusiata for the moment in the order, and that brings us to Mariam Azam. So I'm just going to find Mariam and spotlight her for everybody. And then I will tell you a bit about her. Here we go. So Mariam is a Pakistani-Australian writer and teacher from Western Sydney. Her debut poetry collection, The Hijab Files, was published by Giramondo in 2018, and it was shortlisted for the Anne Elder Award and the Mary Gilmore Award, which is an incredible achievement. Mariam welcomed her first child in 2020, which is an even more incredible achievement. And currently she is interested in writing the experience of new motherhood during a pandemic. So I'm going to hand over to Mariam and ask her to tell us a little about her poem and then to share it with us.
Thank you for the introduction, Melinda. I'm really excited to be here for this event, and I'm really honoured to be included in the Borderless collection, which is an amazing, incredible collection of poetry. I loved reading it. The poem I'm going to read to you from Borderless today is called Routine Appointment, and it's about one of my routine pregnancy appointments during the pandemic, and I guess how surreal and strange it was to experience all of those extra COVID protocols. So without further ado, routine appointment. 2 women stopped me at the entrance. Do you have any symptoms? Up until this point, I had no symptoms, but just like that, my nose starts to run. I suck it up and tell them I don't, while the baby rolls inside, all over my nerves. Have you been to one of the hotspot areas? One of them lifts her temp gun to my head, confirms I'm not running a fever, then hands me a surgical mask and purple wristband. The man at the front of the line to the women's health clinic can't join his wife for her appointment. He says she can't speak English and he needs to translate for her. That's a hard no. He says, can you have me on a video call to translate? Again, no. But there's a translator service, and for $97, a translator can attend, but this needs to be arranged in advance. I want to sniff again, and the baby kicks hard. So I focus on holding up my heavy, drooping body with a hand on my hip. I read and reread the 2 posters on the wall. Sleep on your side when baby's inside. List of COVID hotspots. The man stalks past me. His wife has gone into the clinic. Despite the wristband, I'm questioned about COVID again. The midwife says, find a seat somewhere. The doctor will call. The 6 seats outside the clinic are taken, so I sit on a hard mosaic bench in the main foyer. I read and reread your baby at 32 weeks until a private number calls. It's the doctor. She explains that the phone consultation is one of their COVID measures. Is baby moving well? Am I feeling well? There's not much more to say. Then she says, meet me outside the clinic. I'll bring you inside to check baby's heartbeat. We're meeting face to face? It's part of the routine. I hobble back.
Thank you so much, Mariam. That's wonderful, and just it's inconceivable having to go through all of the rigmarole for the first time and having to do it with COVID protocols on top and bits and pieces that just don't make sense. I really responded to that poem when I first saw it, and I'm really grateful that you shared it tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next reader is, we're switching states. We're going to South Australia. At least I think that's where she is at the moment. So our next reader is Bronwyn Lovell. She's an Adelaide-based writer. Her poetry has featured in Best Australian Poems, Mianjin Southerly Australian Poetry, Cordite Antipodes, Strange Horizons, and more. She has won the Val Vallis Award and been shortlisted for the Judith Wright, Fair Australia, Newcastle, Bridport and Montreal prizes. Her essays have been published by the Journal of Science Fiction, Film and Television, The Conversation and the National Gallery of Victoria. She teaches creative writing and screen studies at the University of South Australia. And I'm now going to find her for you so that you can see her. And Bronwyn will tell us a little bit about her poem Killer. And take it away, Bronwyn.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to the editors and the publisher for this phenomenal book, which I am extremely humbled to be included within. Thank you to everyone who's read. I'm so moved. This poem, I've been thinking about Borderless and what this poem has to do with borders, and also this used to be an immigration. The house I'm in was a detention center house as well, so I just feel like that's worth mentioning. I have children who have graffitied their names in the wardrobes here, and I'm just very grateful for the shelter that this home gives me today. Okay, so this poem, okay, I was thinking how female safety is not borderless, and that women are often find themselves in danger and not safe in between spaces. when they're on their way somewhere, crossing a park, getting in a taxi, or on their way home. And that there are these kind of borders around women's safety, and you know, daylight is a border, and your house is a border, and locking the door is a border, and you know, there are these lines that are crossed. And you know, my own experience of a sexual assault was when I was traveling as well, in a place that people might call a dangerous country, and wearing a dress which might be considered provocative. And so I was thinking about this precarity of being female, and how that is something that transcends borders. And living under patriarchal systems is a universal experience. And this poem is partly about my experience traveling between Victoria and New South Wales in my car with my dog. But it was inspired by reading a news article that was trying to raise awareness about an unsolved case involving a girl 2 years earlier, and there was no conviction in that case. And in this case, what really moved me was that the girl was walking with her dog, and it was in broad daylight. And these are things that might be considered things that would keep us safe. And the borders of a woman's body were transgressed and crossed, and I think also a line or a border around what is human decency was crossed. And the other thing that this poem is about is that it isn't often until these borders are crossed that our brothers and fathers truly understand the threat that it is to be alive as a woman. So this poem is called Killer. Ever since I encountered the bikie who complimented my eyes and tried to fondle me at a rest stop on the Western Highway, I have wanted a Doberman called Killer. When I called for my dog that day, voice shaking as I quick-stepped back to the car, her name did not seem threatening enough. It was Labrador Lovely, Whippet Weak. Carmela was too sweet in her pink diamante collar devoid of studs. 40 kilometers down the road, sure I was not being followed, I pulled over and rang my dad. He said I should expect to be hit on by men because I was young and pretty. I've aged now and put on some weight, so maybe I'm safe. I still want a Doberman. I would spell her name Khila, which means blooming in Hindi. I've always thought having a dog would protect me, but it didn't shield Toya accordingly. Her dad found her gentle shepherd, Indy, tied to a tree not far from her naked body. Toya was too pretty to walk carefree along a quiet beach with a dog that was not a killer. Her youth blooming, legs moving, heart beating fast as her bare feet quick-stepped across the sand, smiling in that I am no threat way before being hit on under the beaming sun.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn. That came out, I mean, that reading, it was just wonderful to hear it in your voice, because I've been, reading it in my head since seeing it in the collection, but it was really lovely to hear your voice telling that story. So the next reader that we have, first I'm just going to give Bronwyn's face a break. and go back to myself for a second. The next reader that we have, I'm really excited to present Dianti Ningram, who is a really interesting up-and-coming voice in Australian poetry, whose work I've been following for a while, and I'm just so excited that she could read for us tonight. So I'll tell you a little bit about her. Dianti Ningram was born and raised in Indonesia. She recently won second place at the Oxford Brookes International Poetry Competition and was shortlisted for the Montreal International Poetry Competition. Her poems have appeared in the Scores and the Australian Poetry Anthology. She currently resides in the unceded land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So I'm just going to spotlight Dianti, and if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about your poem, Dianti, and then reading it, that would be fabulous.
Thank you.
Nice to see you face to face too.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here to meet everyone. I guess it's the first time for everyone to know me. It's been not a long time for me to be in this space, so yeah, very excited. So first of all, I would like to thank the editors of the Borderless anthology. It's a really great anthology, and it's been a pleasure for me to read all of the poems here. Thank you to Melinda, thank you to Saba, and also thank you to Yvette for making this amazing work come true. I'm now based in my home here in Wurundjeri land, and I'm actually not very I'm having a bit of a sore throat right now, so I apologize if I don't sound very loud. I hope that's okay. So a little bit about my poem. The title is If I Die. So I wrote this poem shortly after there's this news article about severe abuses for female workers in palm oil plantation in Indonesia and Malaysia, because they sometimes share same corporations. So to give a little bit of a background, Indonesia and Malaysia palm oil plantation account for almost 80% of the world's palm oil supply, and this corporation, this palm oil productions, is found in almost every major products that uses it in the world. Not only like food like potato chips and pills to pet food, but also ends up in the supply chains of some of the biggest beauty products and beauty businesses in the world, such as L'Oreal, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, which helping women around the world feel pampered and beautiful. So it's a little bit of a irony that this product was produced while sacrificing a lot of women, you know, on the in the process. So I'm just gonna perhaps read a short paragraph in one of the article. So a 16-year-old girl describes how her boss raped her amid the tall trees on an Indonesian palm oil plantation that feeds into some of the world's best-known cosmetic brands. He then put an axe to her throat and warned her, "Do not tell." At another plantation, a woman named Ola complains of fevers, coughing, and nosebleeds after years of spraying dangerous pesticides with no protective gear. Hundreds of miles away, Ita, a young wife, mourns the 2 babies she lost in her 3rd trimester. She regularly lost several times her way throughout both pregnancies, fearing she would be fired if she did not. These are the invisible women of the palm oil industry, among the millions of daughters, mothers, and grandmothers who toil on vast plantations across Indonesia and neighboring Malaysia, which together produce 85% of the world's most versatile vegetable oil. So I'm gonna read my poem now. If I die. To my rainforest sisters, I could be, for example, your favorite tree. I could be your country, her most gentle tyrant, coins of merchants in your silent, fraying bazaar. a jar of no-name black tea with a hint of sweetness from itself. It sounds manic to list the shapes we no longer embody. Walker, daughter, believer. The shell with cotton veil, the wall that paints itself. The color gray, ambivalent as a tongue unbitten. If I should move, I would move like water. No more dismembering. The offbeat notes of a parrot despite the crowd. Almost a life worthy like a holy zeal. I could be Todi's momentary albad. I'd glide a who darker, numbing like everyday's casual cruelties. Like wind that counters ages. No more thorny kindness. I could be just you, Reformation's beloved casualties. No more citadel reserved for every entitled man. So long the ebbing years that keep entertaining the Anthropocene, each passing like rotten elegance. This body's a lake to mourn your shredded beauty. Like you, grief surrenders in certain ways. Grief sings its own song. No grave deep enough for every grief. Say to love your people is to survive. My people, dare I say, I survive a violent love despite decades of decaying. My people, have you tried dying in silence? Die some more and die again 1,000 times, each death annulled by its remembrance. If someone dies, sisters, may roses bleed. May we be given whatever suffice. A body that withstands, the lone song that carries weight. Hush chirp in the distance, this land wet as it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janti. It's really, again, it's wonderful to hear it in your voice, and to get the, the full background to that poem. So we now have a special guest replacement star, as I suppose we would like to call her, or call them. Esfung is here, and their other name is Waffle Iron Girl, and that may be the name that you see in the collection and on the Zoom name indicator. And as is represented in the fabulous Borderless collection, she has quite graciously agreed at the last minute to step in and read their poem, and it will be a wonderful thing for everyone to be able to hear the poem too. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Esfung / Waffle Iron Girl. Esfung is an emerging poet, flash fiction writer and spoken word performer living in Nam. Their poetry has been included in Australian Poetry Journal, Cold Mountain Review and Audacious 4, Melbourne Spoken Words Audio Journal. On stage, they are the poetic analogue of heavy metal karaoke. Off stage, they eat identity labels for breakfast. They live online at waffleiron.girl.com. So I am delighted to be able to present to you the fabulous S, and I'm just going to spot, oh, of course you're under, I'm searching for you under the wrong name. Here we go.
Hi everyone.
Hello. And so tell us a bit about the poem and then share it with us, if you would be so kind.
Okay. Well, firstly, I'm so happy to be here. I do want to say that we're having some postal problems here in Nam, Melbourne. I am speaking to you from Wurundjeri country, from the Kulin Nation. And because of the postal problems, by some miracle, I got my copy of Borderless just yesterday evening. I'm so excited, and I'm so excited to actually be reading the poem from the book itself. Thank you very much to the lovely editors. This is a beautiful, and the cover is beautiful as well. Not much to say about the poem. I think it's all explanatory. I did want to give a warning on language. I apologize to anyone who might be offended by any language in here. And I'll just start, if that's okay. So you said in the meeting that the female client was hot. At first, I didn't know whether to be more offended that you've made the first consideration of a woman's worth her fuckability, or that by saying it in front of me, you think I'm clearly not. Oh, it's just a joke, you say, with a sideways glance you tossed in my direction. I'm having some fun with the boys. I'm a good bloke. Don't mind the bitch face, boss. I'm not gonna bust your ass. I get the joke, believe it or not. I just don't think it's funny. And I'm not angry. I'm just tired. I've crafted an entire person for your consumption, gave myself a footy allegiance, cuss words, brass balls, the lot. Now, I can't go back in time to sign up for the Melbourne Cricket Club, but on the whole, I think the resemblance is true. Don't you? After all this, you have no idea how to speak to one of your own in this unfamiliar form. No kids, no guns, no Range Rover. No little lady at home to cajole into letting me stay out the night. Now, to be fair to you, my act was never that good. My curves too much like the lifesome strippers up there, but with too many awkward political angles. And I may have given myself away with one too many eye rolls when you were just being a good bloke and I refused to get the joke. But honestly, I'm not angry. I'm just tired. We were friendly, so I thought we were friends. You thought so too, because you told me the truth when I asked a question I didn't want the answer to. Why do they listen to you, my friend, when they don't listen to me? Is it because you said that might have something to do with it, but I've worked so hard to make my differences invisible. I'm a man for all the important intents. You said that might have something to do with it too. I should thank you for your honesty, but I've not been able to look you in the eye. You were a good bloke, but stood witness to my humiliation. And for that, I don't know how to forgive you. You think I'm angry at you. I'm not. I'm just tired. When I hear my words through your ears, when I hear alienation instead of tears, I can understand why you would think that the likes of me would be snatching the bread from the mouth of your babes. And there's no use explaining that I'm just like you. I just want to live in the house with the car and the big screen TV, maybe do some good. But these links are too tenuous, will not bridge the differences that run between us that is so much deeper than skin. When you are with me, you don't know how to be a good bloke. Believe me when I tell you I get the joke. I'm not angry. I'm just tired.
Thank you so much for that, Es. Again, fabulous to hear it in your voice. And I'm really appreciative of you stepping up at very short notice to share that poem. And yeah, lots of love on the chat too for that poem. We're now going to be treated to a video interlude. So one of our readers, Samar Sabawi, found herself at short notice in the wrong time zone to participate tonight, but she did have time before she went into the wrong time zone to record her poem for us. So I'm going to tell you about her, and then I'm going to play you back a video of her reading her poem. Samar Sabawi wages beautiful resistance through art. A recipient of multiple awards, her theatre credits include the critically acclaimed plays Tales of a City by the Sea and Them. Sabawi also co-edited Double Exposure, Plays of the Jewish and Palestinian Diasporas, winner of the Patrick O'Neill Award, and co-authored I Remember My Name, poetry by Samar Sabawi, Ramzi Baroud and Jahan Seizo, edited by Dr. Vaisi Vlasna, winner of the Palestine Book Award. So that is all about Samar. We are very honoured that she was able to make time to make a recording for us. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to be able to share it with you. Fingers crossed this goes as it should. And
thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me to be part of this incredible event. And I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be there with you and to listen to your amazing poems. But I am very sure that there will be a recording, fingers crossed, of this event. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to catch up and to listen to everyone's work. My poem is called Case Number 70, and it is, of course, dedicated to all the women who have had to give birth in war zones and at checkpoints. That's not how I imagined it would be. Legs parted on the blood-soaked dirt. Strangers rolling up my skirt. Hands pulling down my undies, guns and phones pointing at me, and UN observers just counting indignities. They write me down, they write me down, they write me down a number. I'm case number 70. 69 women gave birth at these checkpoints. 69 women before me, not one, not two, not three. I inhale strength and sumud, and I exhale their cruelty. I'm not a stray animal to be left on the dirt. That ambulance is here for me. I booked a hospital room. I decorated a nursery. I push, I push, I push. Can I have some privacy? I'm case number 70. I inhale the wisdom of 1,000 matriarchs and the patience of 1,000,000 refugees. And I exhale fear and tyranny. I'm case number 70. I inhale the scent of lemon, the fragrance of jasmine, the warmth of your skin, the tenderness of your flesh slipping out of me and into a spectacle of inhumanity. This is not how I imagined it would be. I breathe you in and I breathe them out. I breathe out the tanks and the guns, the human rights conventions, the UN resolutions, the bullshit conferences. All of it fades into nothingness until you and I are all there is. And all there is you and me. And we are case number 70.
so that was the wonderful Samar Sabawi sharing case number 70. An amazing, amazing poem. I'm just so blown away that she was able to be here without being here, and hopefully she'll be watching the recording back and see that everyone has been responding to her work. So we were going to have readings from 2 more readers who can't be with us tonight, and for various reasons we haven't got recordings from them either. So I'm just going to share with you who they were going to be and tell you a little bit about them and what their poems are called so that you can go and look them up in the anthology. So the first one we were going to hear from was Tusiata Avia, who's actually a previous featured poet here at the Poetry on the Move Festival, and will be well known to folks who were at the festival that she was at. She's now got MNZM after her name. She's a multi-award-winning New Zealand poet and children's book author whose work explores Pacifica and cross-cultural themes, as well as the borders between traditional and contemporary life and between place and the self. Her poetry show, Wild Dogs Under My Skirt, has toured both nationally and internationally, most recently to New York. Her last 2 books Pale Ayutu Spirit House and The Savage Colonizer book. Both were shortlisted for the Ockham New Zealand Book Awards. She is a creative writing lecturer at the Manukau Institute of Technology. And the poem that she was going to share for us tonight was particularly relevant to the theme of the festival, which is working the archives. And it was based on some photographs of a colonial era photographer in New Zealand called Elizabeth Pullman. And the poem was called Elizabeth Pullman, 1836 to 1900 photographer. And yeah, it's just an encounter with some of the photographs that Elizabeth did of people of high rank in the Maori community. So she's encountering the photograph, she's recognizing some of the people and naming them, and she's thinking about Elizabeth's life as a photographer. So it's a really fabulous poem, and I recommend it to you to go and have a look in the book. The other person that we were going to hear from was Lynette Riley. Lynette is a Wiradjuri and Gamilaroi woman from Dubbo and Moree, and she's an associate professor in the Sydney School of Education and Social Work at the University of Sydney, and also program director for Indigenous Studies and Aboriginal Education. Lynette trained as an infants and primary teacher, and she has been a classroom teacher and Aboriginal education consultant, worked in TAFE as State Manager for Aboriginal Education and as an academic. Her career focus is improving educational delivery for Aboriginal students, and her PhD was conferred in 2017. And we're sorry that Lynette couldn't be with us tonight, again at short notice. And her poem is called, it's a long title, I Am Birthed, Born, Directed, Learnt, Learned, Strong and Strengthened. And it's a kind of litany poem where she kind of names and claims her experience as an Indigenous woman. So please do go and check that out in your copy of Borderless. If you haven't been able to get hold of a copy yet, I'm just going to drop a link in the chat to where you can buy it. You can also contact us, the editorial team at Borderless Anthology at gmail.com. And we have, because we were expecting to do a number of live events in 2021, which didn't actually eventuate, we do have a big stock of a box of books that's sitting in Saba's house. So if you, for some reason, the recent work press angle doesn't work for you, if you buy them direct from the Borderless Anthology box, we will be collecting, we'll be passing on some of the, all of the profits, so to speak, to the Hazara refugee that Saba was talking about in her welcome speech tonight. So you have two ways to buy the book and to tell your friends to get hold of the book. And hopefully there will be some more live events next year at which we can continue to give Borderless the book a platform and share the voices of all of the fabulous poets who have contributed to it. One of the other things I didn't say at the beginning is that all of the poems in this book are actually brand new, fresh commissions. So they were written especially for the book, and so that makes it quite a unique thing. It's just a different kind of more contemporary moment than if we'd gone and collected a bunch of poems that had already been written. And it makes it, yeah, quite a special assemblage of work. I'm just going to look into the chat to see what's been going on there. Thank you, Bronwyn. Such a stunning book, she says. And Waffle Iron Girl too. Lots of thanks coming through in the chat. So We were actually going to go a lot longer tonight, but I feel like we have achieved what we came to achieve. Oh, of course, I'm sorry. Beth Spencer, are you still here? Sorry, somebody's texting me and reminding me of my job. Have we got Beth Spencer still
Sorry,
here?
I have. I've just got a mouthful of food.
So I'm now going to spring an opportunity on you. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, once you finish your mouthful of food, sharing your poem from the anthology with us and doing a little explanation.
Okay.
Sorry for putting you on the spot like that. I wasn't, because I'm jumping in and out of spotlight, I'm not able to see everyone all at once, and I had missed that you were here. So
Well, I just try and put a light on so you can actually see me.
okay. So while Beth is getting organised, I will.
I'm so proud to be in it, because you've all just done the most amazing job of bringing together, as you say, the stuff in the moment and such a variety. I love it.
All right. So while you're getting organised, I'll just read your little bio from the book so people know what they're getting, so to speak. So this is the wonderful Beth Spencer. So I'm glad we've now got a regional representative, as it were. That's a kind of a nice balance to the evening. So Beth is an award-winning author of poetry and fiction, and her work has frequently been broadcast on ABC Radio National, and her books include How to Conceive of a Girl, The Party of Life, and Vagabondage. In 2018, she won the Carmel Bird Digital Literary Award for the story collection The Age of Fibs, and it's due out in expanded form as a print book later this year, and you can find all about her at www.bethspencer.com. And I must say, I'm really looking forward to The Age of Fibs.
Oh, thank you. Next year, actually, that's maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything's a bit later than everybody planned.
Yeah.
So hang on, I'll just spotlight you for everyone, Beth. So
no, I just haven't sort of. I wasn't expecting to be.
It's all right. We're getting the authentic poet.
The house, the mess, me, everything, unadorned. So this is a poem about my mother, my family, and from a collection I've been writing about my first 10 years. And one of the things that's coming out of it is the sort of the violence of repressed emotions and the effects this have, and the violence of patriarchy in terms of that relentless, chronic kind of subtle violence that you don't even realize that you've been subjected to. And so you kind of, it takes many years to sort of identify the effects of it and to sort of try and change that. So that's what this book is about. This is a poem from that. It's called Dress Me Up. In the nether region of the wardrobe, my mother's silver wedding shoes are a beacon in that long hallway where the bedrooms hide like bodies. In the pink of a bathroom Sunday, she gives a quick sponge before church. Underarms and privates, skin wholly in the glow from dimpled glass. The secret parts of her, the softest flesh, the smell of soap and shame and sweat. She fastens the clip of the blue diamante necklace, the promise of peace in war, iced now into tears of feeding and dishes, the long capture of children's bodies. And the weddings, white veil, chink in the armour. Outside, tall sun stride long legs in gumboots. Inside, I parade hobbled high in silver dreams. Past uncle art on the walls, driftwood sculptures, across green carpet like paddocks, where the cows low in grief, their milk a shaft of light in a cup under the chaff moats, and the soft, sad chewing of it all, and the click of silver. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth.
You're very welcome.
I do love the soft, sad chewing of it all and the click of silver at the end of that poem. It's just magical, the way it draws it all together. So I'm really glad that we were able to bring a couple of special guest stars to the reading. Beth and Waffle Iron Girl, thank you so much for stepping up. And thank you to our fabulous readers, Cassandra Atherton, Mariam Azam, Bronwyn Lovell, Dianti Ningram, and Samar Sabawi. Thank you to our wonderful audience who have tuned in tonight. Thank you to Recent Work Press again for making this book be a book thing as opposed to an idea thing. And thank you again to Australian Poetry and the Copyright Agency's Australian Cultural Fund for their support of this evening. And thank you to the Poetry on the Move Festival as well for bringing together and pivoting to a completely online festival in lightning time, such a wonderful set of poets and events. So I'm going to hand back over now to Kimberly Williams, Festival Director, who's going to give a little bit of information about the next couple of events coming up. And I'm going to shut up. It's been lovely. And thank you for your attention.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can definitely hear you.
I'm sorry, just my microphone plays up, that's all. Okay, great. First of all, Melinda, thank you so much. I feel like I just was part of something incredibly important tonight, and I keep thinking of the line from Selma's poem, I inhale the wisdom of 1,000 matriarchs. I come from a long line of strong women, and that just the whole evening resonated for me. But I think that line kind of, it just delivers it profoundly. So I would like to also thank Saba for helping to organize this evening, for starting it off. Shane at Recent Works Press, and I just wanted to also thank tonight's readers, of course, and Australian Poetry.